A 25-year-old who was supposed to be the next face of basketball, sitting at home during playoff time for the 6th straight year. Not because he's not talented enough, but because his body simply wouldn't let him play when it mattered most. This is Zion Williamson's reality, a player whose career has become defined more by what we haven't seen than what we have. But something shifted this summer in New Orleans. Something that might finally unlock the potential that made scouts compare him to LeBron James before he'd even finished college. The question isn't whether Zion can dominate when healthy anymore. We've seen that. The real question is whether the most physically gifted player of his generation can finally become the leader his franchise desperately needs. When Joe Dumars walked into the Pelicans facility as their new executive vice president, he inherited basketball's most complicated puzzle. Here's a player averaging nearly 25 points per game throughout his career, yet he's missed more games than he's played. Think about that for a second. In 6 professional seasons, Zion has been unavailable for his team more often than he's been there for them. The numbers tell a brutal story. 268 games missed, 214 games played. That's not just injury-prone, that's a pattern that would break most franchises' patience. But Dumars, the former Bad Boys champion, saw something different when he sat down with Williamson this summer. He saw a player ready to finally take responsibility for his career trajectory. Here's what most people miss about that conversation between Dumars and Zion. It wasn't just about basketball, it was about accountability. Dumars made it clear that being the face of a franchise means more than highlight dunks. It means showing up when reporters want to blame you for losses, carrying yourself like a leader when everything's falling apart, and most importantly, being available when your teammates need you most. But there's another layer to this dynamic that's been overlooked. Teammates and coaches have noticed something different about Zion this offseason. He's visibly slimmer and has been training with unprecedented intensity. But this isn't just about dropping weight. This is about a fundamental shift in how he approaches his craft. The boxing workouts, the football field drills alongside NFL players, these aren't gimmicks. They're signs of a player who finally understands that his natural gifts aren't enough anymore. When you've got a weight clause in your contract that requires you to stay under specific body composition targets, every meal becomes a decision about your future. What's fascinating is how Dumars has approached this transformation. He's not coddling Zion or making excuses for the past. Instead, he's demanding that Williamson embrace the uncomfortable reality of leadership. When games go sideways, Dumars wants Zion to be the first person talking to media, taking responsibility, facing the questions that stars usually deflect to coaches or veterans. Think about how radical that approach is for a player who spent most of his career injured or managing his comeback from injury. Now he's being asked to not just play, but to be the voice of accountability for an entire organization. And this is where the story takes a fascinating turn. Here's a stat that should haunt every Pelicans fan. Zion Williamson has never played a single playoff game. Not one. Meanwhile, his team has made the postseason twice without him, losing in the first round both times. That's not just bad luck. That's a franchise forced to prove they can succeed without their supposed cornerstone. The 2022 season perfectly captures this frustration. New Orleans was playing their best basketball with Zion healthy, then watched their playoff hopes crumble when he suffered another hamstring injury. Imagine being a fan watching your team build momentum, knowing it's all meaningless because your star can't stay on the court when it matters. But here's what nobody talks about regarding those playoff misses. Each one has taught the Pelicans something crucial about their identity. They've learned they can compete without Zion, which actually puts more pressure on him, not less. When he returns, he's joining a team desperate for salvation. He's joining a group that's proven they don't need him to succeed. However, there's a deeper issue at play here that goes beyond just games missed. Zion's injury history has created something more damaging than just missed games. It's created questions about his commitment to winning. Fair or not, whispers follow him everywhere about conditioning, about whether he truly has the hunger of a champion, about whether he's more interested in highlight reels than grinding out victories. The fact that his max contract includes weight monitoring requirements tells you everything about how the organization viewed his professionalism. That's not standard procedure for superstars. That's what you do when you're not sure if a player will take care of their body without external motivation. Dumars understands this perception problem better than most executives would. As a player, He was part of a Pistons culture that demanded excellence through accountability. The bad boys didn't tolerate excuses or half measures. That championship mentality is exactly what he's trying to instill in Williamson. When Dumars talks about wanting Zion to face media after tough losses, he's not just building media relations, he's building character. Champions don't hide behind coaches or teammates when things go wrong. They step forward and take responsibility even when it's uncomfortable. But here's where things get really interesting. This Pelicans roster isn't built around hoping Zion stays healthy anymore. They've constructed a team that can function with or without him, which actually creates the perfect environment for his growth. Players like CJ McCollum, Herb Jones, and Trey Murphy have established their own identities during Zion's absences.
The addition of veterans like Kevon Looney brings championship experience that this franchise has desperately needed. These aren't just solid players, they're guys who know what it takes to win at the highest level. When Looney talks about playoff intensity, Zion has to listen because he's never experienced it. This creates a fascinating dynamic where Zion might finally be in an environment that challenges him to be better rather than just accommodating his limitations. For years, the Pelicans have had to game plan around his potential absence. Now they've built depth that allows them to thrive regardless of his status. Yet there's still one massive elephant in the room. No amount of off-season conditioning can erase the reality that Zion's body has betrayed him repeatedly. Foot injuries, hamstring strains, back problems. The medical file reads like a player in his mid-30s, not someone who's supposed to be entering his prime. The cruel irony is that Zion's greatest asset, his explosive athleticism, might also be his biggest vulnerability. The way he plays puts tremendous stress on joints and muscles in ways that traditional big men don't experience. He's not just posting up and shooting over defenders. He's launching himself through the air with a force that few humans can generate. But here's what gives this situation hope: the infrastructure changes. The Pelicans have invested heavily in sports science and player development. They've brought in specialists who understand how to manage explosive athletes throughout 82-game seasons. This isn't just about getting Zion healthy, it's about keeping him healthy. The real test isn't whether he can dominate for 20 games, it's whether he can be consistently available for 70-plus games while maintaining his effectiveness. That's the standard that separates stars from superstars in today's NBA. And that brings us to the most important question. What's changed isn't just Zion's body, it's his mindset about what leadership actually means. For years, he could rely on his natural talent to carry him through games. Now he's being asked to carry a franchise through adversity, through media criticism, through the pressure of championship expectations. Dumars isn't just developing a player, he's trying to develop a leader. The emphasis on media availability, on taking responsibility, on being the voice of the team. These are calculated moves to force Zion into uncomfortable growth. Champions are made in those uncomfortable moments, not in the easy victories. This season represents more than just another comeback attempt. It's a test of whether Zion can evolve from a highlight reel into a culture setter. Can he be the player who changes how teammates approach preparation? Can he be the voice that holds everyone accountable when standards slip? Here's the reality that makes this season so crucial. Zion is running out of second chances. At 25, he's no longer a young player learning the league. He's supposed to be entering his prime, competing for championships, establishing himself among the NBA's elite. Instead, he's still trying to prove he can stay healthy for a full season. The organization has invested everything in this version of Zion, the slimmer, more committed, leadership-focused version. They've brought in championship veterans, hired demanding executives, and built a roster that can compete immediately if their star is available. There are no more excuses about supporting cast or organizational culture. What makes this moment so compelling is that success isn't just about individual achievements anymore. The Pelicans aren't just hoping Zion can score 25 points per game. They need him to be the anchor that stabilizes a franchise ready to compete. They need him to be available in April and May, not just October and November. Zion Williamson stands at the most critical crossroads of his career. He's no longer the promising rookie with unlimited potential. He's a 25-year-old superstar who's never played a playoff game. The transformation he's undergone this summer suggests he finally understands the magnitude of that reality. Joe Dumars didn't come to New Orleans to manage decline or make excuses. He came to build a champion, and he's betting everything that Zion can be the centerpiece of that vision. Not the explosive dunker we fell in love with at Duke, but the complete leader that championship teams require. The question that will define the next chapter of Pelicans basketball isn't about athletic ability or scoring averages. It's about whether Zion Williamson can finally become the player his talent always suggested he could be, not just when the spotlight is brightest, but when his team needs him most. The stage is set, the supporting cast is ready, and the expectations have never been clearer. Now it's time to see if Zion can finally deliver on the promise that's been 6 years in the making.